So I hope whoever's listening to this now, put the mirror up, give yourself an opportunity to introspect and go, where am I passing down things that I'm willing to change within me first?
How can our perspective on life change? Someone who's certainly got more than a couple of stories is this week's guest, passionate and inspiring Nadine Muller, who served in the Australian military and as an emergency nurse saw the ultimate highs and the devastating lows that changed and shaped the lives of many.
I was so resourceful that if I got a no, I would find a yes somewhere.
She's just released her book, A Reason to Rise, which is reflections throughout her career, the peaks and also the struggle of some pretty deep valleys through grief and loss that led her to make a shift in life.
When we look back on our tapestry of our life, we realize that our life has been giving us clues the entire time. If you want to get anywhere or fast track or quantum leap, you don't just do the one step ahead, do 10 steps ahead.
Nadine, welcome to Share.
Hello, Steve. Thank you so much for having me.
What an absolute pleasure and just an honour to have you on the podcast today, and looking forward to diving into some great topics.
Absolutely. I feel as though we can take so many twists and turns with this, so let's get into it.
Yeah, cool. We'll go whatever we're drawn to. Obviously, you released a book recently, so congratulations on that.
Thank you so much. It's been a beautiful, overwhelming response that we've received over the last few months and then week really. It's only just launched in the last few days, so it's exciting.
Yeah, that is really, really exciting. And obviously I want to touch more on that a little bit later, but obviously through life, like a book, we have many chapters. And I'd love you to just kind of give us a bit of a snapshot on what are the chapters been for you? What's your story?
Yeah, I have got an interesting background, much like anyone. When we look back on our tapestry of our life, we realize that our life has been giving us clues the entire time. And I like to think that now I'm living what I classify as my ikigai, and that's being able to lead many men, women, couples, and whole families to their own purpose-led life and their own life according to their own terms and whatever freedom and success or whatever that looks like to them. Though in my past lives, and I feel like I've had many, Steve, I'm sure you felt the same too with yourself and your story. I've in a former life, I was in our Australian military as an officer for a decade and a half. So I was in our Royal Australian Air Force, and that certainly gave me beautiful and gifted me so many experiences and exposures that I firmly believe cannot be found anywhere else except for in our armed forces. And for over a decade, I was an emergency registered nurse. So I have seen and been around a lot of trauma, a lot of life, a lot of death, a lot of rebirth, a lot of, you name it, someone having their best day of their life, birthing a baby or something really exciting that they've needed some, medical assistance for. And then conversely, on some of their worst days of their lives. And unfortunately, for some people, that's where they end their life. So it's been an interesting journey. That's two former lives that I've had. And then, of course, amongst all of that, I'm a mother. I'm a beautiful aunt and friend and sister. And just like many of us, we get to be and have many identities and every label that we get to assign ourselves with. And I have definitely got lots of those.
Yeah, perfect. So if I can take you back to kind of earlier on in your story, talk to me about what are some of the sliding door moments that happened for you early on in your life that kind of shaped you?
Yeah, look, I'm gonna say for this, Steve, it's a lot of the shaping certainly was my military lineage and a lot of my, bloodline in our armed forces. For me, I'm knocking on 40's door now. So when I was, at 17 joining the military as a young woman, I was entering a network and an organization that was predominantly male driven, predominantly, male led. So it was a really big deal, I suppose, especially for my family. I've come from a lineage of just every person in my family joined the military. So when I said mum and dad, and I had a lot of, males in my family. So when it was, I was the daughter and I was also going to join the military, they're like, oh my gosh, not you as well. Like my mom was very much like, no, everybody else has. I thought you were going to, go to uni or do something else and live a life that wasn't military oriented. Though lo and behold, I also did. And so it shaped me in a way of I grew up really, really fast. So Growing up, yes, whilst I left home at 17, I was very much from ground roots where I had to grow up really fast in my home anyway. I was the youngest of 2, though, from a blended family. We had a lot going on in our household. Our household was, filled with alcohol fueled domestic violence. There was a lot in our family, that was happening at the time. And so as a young girl, whilst I have so many
Yes.
incredible memories that shaped me beautifully, I also have incredible memories that shaped me become the person I am today. And
Mm.
so then when I joined the military, it was very much a, hey, I need to actually set myself up and create a life that I can ultimately my plan why I wanted to join the military was get enough money so I could send my mum home money and create a life where she could actually live on her own aside, like, separate from my dad. That was actually one of my driving factors of joining the military, aside from, you know what, everybody else has done that too. So that really shaped a lot of my decision making. Around my girlfriends that were leaving home or going to uni or whatever else or having a few gap years, I had to get straight into the workforce. I mean, I was working again, I really encourage anyone that's listening to this, what was your, first few jobs or what was your thing? Was it when you left home or was it beforehand? I started working when I was 13. And I
Mhm.
remember um, working at this nursery where I would get $62. I'd be there all day from 6 till often 3:30 till 4 PM in the afternoon. I'd get $62 for the day in cash and I'd give it to mum and dad and go, I hope this helps. And essentially that was my upbringing every weekend. And not because someone told me that I had to, though I knew that there were so many struggles at home that I needed to provide extra support to. So again, when we go along a tapestry of life and what you do and what shapes you, an upbringing where I had to grow up really fast, a military oriented, from a 17-year-old, young woman joining a very male oriented, society and organization. I also then had to grow up very fast, Steve. I saw, a lot of things that as a young woman, it's like the rest of my, cohort and community and people around me were just having the time of their life. And meanwhile, I was seeing, experiencing what I got to and also what beautifully shaped who I am today for sure as well. There are so many more, Steve, and I feel as though, again, it's family, it's, what you see, what you experience, what then becomes your identity, what are your values, what are your beliefs then, and they were formed really early for me as a young girl, for sure.
Yeah, perfect. So it was the family that kind of led you into a career in the military. Talk to me about what was something going into the military that you ended up not being prepared for?
Yeah, I like to think I was 17, naive, very, very much, and was like, yeah, I was, um, an incredibly fit young woman. Fitness was always a thing of my life. So, throughout school, training, physical fitness, leading myself through, uncomfortable, challenges physically was something that I always loved doing. Pushing the limits, things like that. Again, I was that was happening in my own home, so I could actually create that outside of the home environment, be able to push awesome limits. And I again, notice how I say that, Steve. I'm so grateful for my upbringing because it actually brought out this tenacity and resilience in me that, again, through experience, if you wish to shine a light on it, it builds the version of you. So I'm actually really appreciative of it all. Um, so what I wasn't prepared for though was, again, I got thrusted into wonderfully leadership positions really, really quickly. So at just 19 years of age, so within a couple of years of my military career, I was in an incredible unit within defense down in Canberra, and it's called 34 Squadron. Essentially, it's our VIP operations. So
Mm.
VIP operations in Canberra basically are our Australia's version of Air Force One. So at 19 years of age, I was what was called a C category crew attendant. So I often had the Prime Minister, the Governor General, in my safety on an aircraft from the back of the cockpit back, and they were my responsibility along with their staffers, their close, CPP or their close protection personnel, and it was an incredible responsibility that, again, going back to my story earlier, very quickly in leadership and in management and in a little girl that already had to grow up pretty fast as a young woman, she again grew up really, really fast because the responsibility bestowed upon me within the military was huge. And so again, when it comes to not being prepared for that, I remember spending most of my time abroad and most of my time overseas. And particularly when we were in America, and I remember during the times off, I wasn't actually allowed to drink. I was only 19. So I was in America at 21. The crew would be off and spending their off time or whatever before flying home. And I remember being in America just going, "Holy, I am still just this young pup, and I'm doing what most people would assume, a 30-year-old does or a 25 or whatever." Some of my colleagues and those that I were leading were much older than me, and yet at 19, this is what I was doing. So whilst I wasn't prepared for it, and what I wanted to bring to this was you cannot be prepared for something and very quickly you get very, very prepared for it. You get very accustomed to how, to the why, to the mission, to the reason. And again, it fast tracked my, what I do now. I lead a lot of men and women and couples and families and whole units. And I firmly believe, again, it's been the past shaping and what I've done, my experience and my exposures that led me to do that. And at any time now, whenever I embark on something that I haven't done before, I go, "Oh, how many times have you not done something and you give it a crack and then you do it?" That's the quickest way and the fastest way for you to learn something. Just throw yourself straight in the deep end.
Yeah, yeah. It's what's the quote that says, you don't know how strong you are until being strong is all that you've got.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And again, if you wanna get anywhere or fast track or quantum leap or you don't just do the one step ahead, do 10 steps ahead, learn from and stand on the shoulders of giants, and that is definitely what I did. And then now I do that even from a coaching and mentoring point of view and who I hire as coaches and mentors. I don't just hire someone that's a couple of steps ahead of me. I want the full gamut experience. So I hire someone that's 10,000 steps ahead of me. I put myself in
Mm.
their corner because I'm gonna learn the most when I do.
Yeah, definitely. Now, obviously, right from, when you were 13 with your first job, and obviously you talked about your family circumstances and the pressure that was kind of put on you. You had to work, you had to provide, you felt you had this responsibility. Um, Obviously you that would have added a quite a I suppose a heavy pressure to you, a heavy weight on your shoulders.
Mm.
Talk to me about when it cracked. Was
Oh,
there a
yeah.
time when you just sat there and it just all came out?
Yeah. Yeah, and it's a junction that everyone will experience at some point
Mm.
because, you can keep going, and that's a huge part of my book, A Reason to Rise, and it's about, overcoming adversity and stepping into your power, though you realize that your greatest power is actually the surrendering to doing it all and being the person that everyone relies on. So, it absolutely came to a screaming halt, Steve, when, when what I call a life collision in better terms, and when I'm talking in a way that, I speak it with my friends, I call it life fucks. And I had what was called the greatest life fuck, and it was like a collision and a hurricane of all things all at once. Now, I firmly believe who I became then, that was the only thing that was going to stop me. Because at the time, like it's like universally, you had to stop me in my tracks because I would just find a way. I was so Um, the word would be I was so resourceful that if I got a no, I would find a yes somewhere, even if it took me like, think of someone that would just be like, I'm just gonna figure out a way to figure out something and I will find it, even if it like tooth and nail to get there, she'll figure it
Mm.
out. That was me. Now, fast forward, um, I later on got married, had 2 children. My husband at the time I was working in emergency departments. I had my career in the military. I was actually taking care of my dad who had, advanced stage dementia at this point, and he'd later on had a stroke. My mum was taking care of him and, even just hear me as I speak into it, the complexities of this. My mum was taking care of him as his carer and just was at max. She was like, "I am literally I can't do this anymore." I was like, "Okay, here we are." Dane's father was given a terminal diagnosis and had 6 months left to live, so both of our dads were really crook at the time. My older brother, who, is, my best mate and also a career in the military, also had a lot of things going on, also come from the same background, also went through a lot of things at once and was going through a divorce. And, we were taking care of his little one, um, and there was a storm of all of this, and little did I know that in my own home, my husband was actually dealing with some significant mental health challenges and was having some significant suicidal ideation, and I was clearly missing it. Now, I just wanna remember or remind people listening, I was an emergency registered nurse. My specialty was mental health, and yet I missed this happening in my own home because I was too busy looking after everybody. Now I'm gonna add a few more in here, Steve, just to paint the picture of this hurricane and this life fuck and this life collision. I was then pregnant and had I was intentionally pregnant at the time we were growing our family, and I was riddled with this condition that I now advocate hugely for called hyperemesis gravidarum. So I spent most of my pregnancy in hospital violently sick. Um, so hyperemesis is exactly as that name. So hyper means a lot and emesis means sick. So I was vomiting pretty much the whole time throughout my entire pregnancy. I would spend most of my time in hospital dripped up on feeds, as in and on IV fluids. And at 32 weeks, my and this was also while I'm trying to hold this family unit, take care of this, take care of this person. I'm pregnant. I couldn't work in my military job. I couldn't even uphold any shifts at the emergency department. I became the patient. All right. Um, so you can imagine from an identity point of view, it was like this woman that normally can do all of it was like the biggest face in the mirror of like, you can't do it all anymore. Everyone that relies on you can't rely on you anymore. What happens when you can't be that person for everyone? You can imagine.
Mm,
Now, a few more to add to that just before. And again, I want to say it's intentional with how I'm even speaking it because that's how many things were going on at once. 32 weeks, my waters had broken. Cut a long story short, huge birth trauma. I nearly died. My child nearly died. Then we were faced with a premature baby at 8 months, 8 weeks premature, so 2 months premature. And with a premature baby, that's a feat in itself, let alone a significant birth trauma experience and a harrowing 7-month journey of a pregnancy that was already physiologically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually really challenging and really demanding. So it took every bit of me. You can imagine the identity in me, my mindset that was before that pregnancy, super sharp, my get shit done, my mentality, of tenaciousness, resilience, my identity that was born through my upbringing, my identity that was born through my military, lineage, my military, leadership and experience, my ability to test all limits.
mm,
Suddenly it was like, oh my gosh, I'm not this superhuman that everyone else paints me to be and that I've believed me to be. And now I've missed the mark in my marriage. I've missed the mark in being able to support someone through some really big things. I've missed the mark in what it takes to take care of family because I thought that that was taking care of family, just being there for everyone, okay?
mm,
Um, so again, that's where it came to a screaming halt, Steve, and that's the quickest way for me to explain it. Hence why I wrote a book, Steve, because otherwise it takes hours. Now, a reason to rise and the reason for my rising was realizing that the obstacle in the way was myself and that I was actually the person that was creating chaos in my life and at the same time a lot of things that weren't, you know, my doing. Um, you know, I didn't need I got to surrender to all the things that were happening and I didn't have to fix it all. A lot of the things it
mm,
wasn't up to me to fix. They were other people's things. Yeah, I remember trying to fix my husband's mental health challenges. That's not mine to fix. I can support someone and love someone through that, though that's not mine to take on and carry.
mm,
Same with my mum, same with my dad, same with my brothers, same with I was the woman. I'm sure I feel like you'd be the same person, Steve. Everyone would come to me for all the things.
mm.
And I
Yep.
would drop everything that I was doing, even if it meant taking off the clothes off my own back and being like, "Hey, here, I'll give you this." And it went down the most incredible journey of self-work and identity work and shadow work and deep healing work and generational trauma work. And fast forward, that work then led me to changing my own life, changing the lives of my immediate family. My husband now does this beautiful work alongside me, and we now lead so many women and men, couples and families to changing their life and quite literally releasing the identities that are no longer theirs to carry anymore, generationally or, personally.
Yeah. So talk to me about what are some of the steps, for someone listening that is kind of going far out. I'm, maybe not to the extent that you were. They may even be worse than where you were at.
Mm.
They may be going through, this real turbulent period.
Oh,
Talk to me about some of the questions they should be asking themselves, or some of the advice that you'd give them to start kind of, I suppose, crawling back out of the hole that they find themselves in.
yeah. One of my first things that I always say is, "Are you doing any of this out of shooting?" So I talk about in the book shooting yourself to death. So I had a really great mentality in the past that didn't serve me. It served me up until then, till I decided that it no longer served me. That I was doing a lot of things because that's what I thought I should do. I should serve the country. I should leave all of the issues that are happening in my home so I can serve my community, you know, as an emergency registered nurse. Now, I'm not saying that we shouldn't do that, though let us not do the shoulds when our own homes are struggling. Let
Mm,
us not do the shoulds when our own self, and when I say our own home, the very own home that you're in as well, your own home, yourself, right? Are you doing anything of what you're doing out of the should? Are you doing it because that makes you feel important because someone goes, "Oh my gosh, thank you for helping me do X or Y or Z." Does it feed this ego or this story where you're this person that saves the day, or you're this person that's perfect, or you're this person that pleases everybody else and leaves you behind? So the first thing I would suggest or ask you to consider or ask yourself first of all is, am I doing any of this from a should place? And straight away, it's such a powerful question. Um, and when you realize that and you start to actually put, a mirror in front of you and go, "Where does this serve me?" It can be a really great, crossroad, if you will, for some attention on yourself. Second of all, just because we love identity work, I often ask people, "Who are you?" Like, who are you truly at the core of who you are? Like, and can you answer that when, especially for the mum, I serve a lot of women that are mothers. Or I serve a lot of women that are entrepreneurs and business owners, and I'll say, "Who are you outside of your business being amazing? And who are you outside of your CEO role? Who are you outside of the mother? Who are you outside of the wife or the daughter?" And for most people, they are so great to explain what their identity is, though at the core, right? I'm like, "What do you do for fun?" And they're like, "I don't know, I never have fun." I'm like, "These are the kind, I don't know. Everything that I have fun with is literally rooted in my identity as motherhood." And you're like, "Yeah." If you were to take that identity away though, what do you like doing for fun? You, like Steve Hodgson, Nadine Muller, like, what do you do for fun? Right? Because
mm,
we have to find and discover the identity of self that is self, not anybody else, that is not weaved between the father or the mother or the wife or the husband or the partner or the friend or the daughter or the CEO or the director or the founder or the podcaster. Like, who are we when nobody is watching? Who are we when everyone is watching? And is that congruent? Or
mm.
do we mask wear,
And
essentially?
who do we think we need to be, right? So
Yes.
I know going through some of my coaching clients and some of the retreats that I've been on, it's interesting because people will sit there and go, "Oh, but I'm being the best mum or I'm being the best dad because I work really hard to provide for my family." But then it's like, but are you actually being the best dad or the best mum or the best guardian or the best partner? Like, or are you've kind of come up with this story in your head
Yeah.
to make you feel like you're contributing. But in saying that, a lot of the time people talk about success and money and providing for your family. But then you go, okay, how much time do you spend with your family?
Correct.
Like,
Correct.
what do you do for fun with your family? Do you sit on your phone and just doom scroll? while the kids are just watching TV, or do you actually have conversations? Do you take them out on weekends? Do you do things that interest them, even if you're not interested in them, but that they're interested in and they're having fun and they're learning and you're actually seeing them light up in
Yeah.
themselves because they're
Love
doing what they are being drawn to, right? And
that.
they appreciate, I think I think most kids appreciate time more than money.
Oh, 100%. 110%. I often say to people I know, well, do you remember the toy that you got at when you were 5 or 10 or 15? No way. You'll remember the Christmas or the birthday because depending on the experience of who was with you and how you felt. I don't remember a single toy. I don't remember much of anything like that, though I'll remember that time of deep presence. I will remember, both my mum and dad beautifully. And again, in speaking about my upbringing, it's like, my dad, whilst he had his own traumas and battles that he never really faced until his, dying days, he was an incredible man just filled with a lot of trauma that was unresolved. And though I remember the presence and the stillness and the love that he would, because we didn't have it all, though we had it all as far as time was concerned, and that's what
Yeah.
matters most, and I love that you shared that because, if your value is, we have people here all the time that go, "My value is family," and you nailed it just before. You said, "Okay, but how much time are you spending with family if that's your true value?" And I will be the first person to go, "BS, that is not your value yet. It might be your preconceived ideal of what it is, though you're not living in alignment with your value." Because if family was your value, you would, no, I share some things that really triggers people, and I'm okay with that. That's what I'm here to do. I'm not here to befriend people. I'm here to activate people, yeah? And it's like, if you love your family that much, and if you care about them that much, are you living a life that in the scary world that we live in right now, are they going to be safe because you've shown them how? If
Mm,
something happens to your family, have you created enough abundance and wealth that you can buy yourself out of trouble? That you could say, "My kid needs this, and I will go to that surgeon." Do you know what I mean? Like, that is taking care of your family. Yeah,
mm,
like, I know now for us, because again, I came from financial absolute scarcity, and I'm the one, and I've become the one, and this is what I lead people through, to become the one in their family to change the story, because when you change that, you are literally the line in the sand to actually be the person in the family that changes the story in the way that they need it. Now, I'm just utilizing money as an example. It's the same as, you know, um, releasing traumas or anything in regards to being the person that draws a line in the sand in a generational patterning that repeats itself over and over. So, for example, mine would have been, um, that anger, that resentment, that alcohol fueled violence, that ability to never stop, to surrender. Do you know what I mean? Like, I was also doing what was shown to do by my family, even though I was the feminine. I was never stopping. And again, did I remember saying to myself in the mirror, like, "Do I want my children to marry someone like me, who never has the time or the presence to actually just stop and be still?" And
mm.
I'm raising 2 little boys, Steve. So for me, I remember sort of reverting to my husband and just being like, he deserves someone that fully sees him and has the time for him too. Not all the time, doing this, doing this, doing this, missing him, as in missing what was happening in front of my eyes because I wasn't even present enough to know that someone was struggling right there. You know? There's
Yep.
so many things when it comes to values, that are you living in accordance with your value, or is the value the idea that you thought?
Yeah. I obviously do a lot of stuff around mental health now going through the journey that I've had. And, I popped on my story and I had this thought last night around pleasure and pain, right? Like, we kind of, mask, I suppose, or we numb numb pain by pleasure,
Yes.
right? And that
Yes.
sometimes can be substances, can be drugs, can be
Training,
other certain,
exercise.
yep, can be certain other things. But at the end of the day, if you don't fix the root of the pain, over time, there is no level of pleasure, there is no level of achievement that can actually kind of fully mask that pain. That pain is going to come out. It
Yeah.
is going to slowly appear and it's going to rear its head. And a lot of the time, as you probably shared and, through your story, it is going to rear its head at probably the most inopportune time
Yeah.
when the shit
When
completely hits the fan and
Yeah.
everything else goes. And what happens in that point is that you sit there and you go, why is this all happening to me? But if you look back and connect all the dots, you've actually attracted it all.
Correct. Correct, Steve. You've literally brought it into your life. And and again, to some people, they don't get that until it happens to them. And then it's like, "Oh, I see." And I whenever I look back now at that moment or that time where it was like, "Whoa, it's here. Are you willing to face? Are you willing to no longer, you know, just put it to the side and figure it out later in one day?" There was no option, I had to then. When you're sitting in a hospital bed on your back and you're violently ill and at one point then because of my waters had broken, I actually had toilet privileges. I had to stay on my back. And it was like the universe just said, "You can't use your training anymore." I'd train like I was an athlete. I was in the bodybuilding space. I was able to control all these areas of my life. Suddenly, I couldn't control myself, my body, arguably my mind at that point until I'd, configured and released that version of me and then, claimed the next. I had to be really willing to face the woman or the man or whomever in the mirror and go, "Are you in the arena?" And really, even if I look back on it, Steve, joining the military, I'm so grateful for it and it shaped me, as I mentioned, though it was an easy option for me. People go, "Wow, how brave at 17." No. And again, I speak about this openly. I share about it in my book. I speak about it, with our clients and with anyone. It was actually the safest thing for me to do because that's what I knew. It was something that was ingrained in me. I lived in a home where memorabilia of the military was all around me. It was safe for me to leave home and join the military. That wasn't a brave thing as a young 17-year-old, and yet that's what everyone told me, "That's so brave for you to do." It was actually
Mm,
the safe option for me. Obviously, I later on went to uni, I did a lot of other things later on, though that was after the safety of doing something that I knew.
yep.
It's
Yeah.
interesting.
It's interesting as well because I think in life, a lot of us, that are high performers and we focus on achievement and we focus on being there and doing all these things. As you said, you were like, looking after, your dad and you were caring for your mum and you were, trying to care for your husband and all these different things, right? And the interesting thing is a lot of the time we keep ourselves busy because once our mind goes quiet,
Yeah.
that's where the demons come, right? That's when it's quiet and in those times of silence, our mind is allowed to think. And we don't like thinking a lot of the time because if we think, then we reflect and then we have more awareness and then we we pose or our brain poses questions to us that we may not actually want to answer, or feel
Yeah.
ready to answer. But it's in that deep work that you do when those questions pose in those silent times, in those times of reflection. Once you start answering those, as hard as it is, and there'll be tears and there'll be tantrums and there'll be
Mm.
like really rock bottom moments, but you emerge so more empowered once you've
Mm.
gone through that process.
100%, and it's, a discovering and a homecoming like never before once you have. And, it then becomes wildly addictive. Do you know what I mean? Like, I now know Steve and for us and this work, I'm a forever student of this work because it's like every now and then something will pop up and I'll be like, "Wow, that's interesting that that's happened again," or it's like a bigger level, bigger devil of something.
Mm.
and, it's you don't I always wanna say it, I'm really open about it, we host our retreats here, and it's like we say on that day 3, guys, it doesn't end here, like, the work is forever. You don't leave here and you're all healed and you're grown, you're transformed. Yes, you've left a lot of stuff behind. Though if you want to truly continue to leave the things behind that you're declaring or that you've energetically left behind, then you've gotta also be willing to over and over and over repeat with repetition of both behavior, values, beliefs, and
Mm.
knowing, and then your language, like everything that you do, so it's congruent with where you're wanting to go. Again, Steve, that past version of me, I call about the 3 Ps. It was a huge perfectionist because, again, I knew my mom and dad would be really happy together when I achieved or was perfect in something. It would create harmony in the home. This was the same with my brother. If we, won an award, if we did anything that was, achieving, like, then the home would be still. It would be, people would be happy. So you can imagine how the past version of me would then go on this achievement barrage, if you will, and this ability to create to keep those around me in harmony. So
Mm.
that past the 3 Ps being, yeah, perfectionist, people pleaser, because that also comes in that's hand in hand. And the other one was actually procrastinate. And the reason why I say procrastinate is because these 2 actually create a vortex for that to happen because you're so like, "Fuck, I've got all these things that I should do for everybody else so we can create harmony, and that's gonna feel safe for me, and these are the people that I love, and XYZ." You can then go on this huge journey of knowing what to do, but having so many things in your mind to go and do and execute that you can actually procrastinate. Then you may not actually trust yourself enough to action some things because you're waiting for it to be perfect and you're waiting for it to please others, that you also then procrastinate. So those 3 Ps can be, and this goes for both women and men, the biggest obstacles in the way. Though, as I always say, the obstacle in the way is the way, and we are the obstacle. We're either the biggest liberation or our own limitation. So I realized those 3 Ps were either going to set me free or keep me where I was, right? Though I don't make them wrong, Steve, in the same essence, because this is where I feel the world goes a bit wrong. Let's not make perfectionist something that we just go, "No, that's not okay to have." Let's not make being someone that loves to please others not okay to have. Let's not make procrastinating or looping in a decision or just, having some reverence to just hang for a moment before executing a decision. Let's not make those things wrong. So just like water, H2O, just like salts, too much of anything will kill you. Not enough of those things will also kill you. Let us make these 3 Ps, and I can almost put this to absolutely anything, right? Because we know duality, it's like, life, death, like the moon, the sun, the night, the day, everything requires the opposite. We need duality. Though, can we see how too much of any of those 3 Ps, literally, if we want to say that, will kill you or keep you
Mm.
exactly where you are?
Mm. Yeah. So, so true. So, so true. Nadine, I want to ask you through your obviously time as an emergency nurse, through the military, through some of the grief and loss that you've experienced. Talk to me about what you've learned through that.
Yeah. You know, I've, yeah, personally experienced so much grief in my life and then professionally have experienced so much loss and trauma. So I've basically seen it from every formal and informal way. I've also had the pleasure now twice, both of my dads, taking care of them right to their end of their life and then beyond. One of them in the home, palliatively, we did it at home, and then the other in a care facility. And then as a nurse, and certainly as an emergency registered nurse, I was known for it. Emergency is super fast paced and it is super just get in, get it done, people die, let's move on. Though it was a huge part of my spiritual recovery and discovery and a huge part of my connection with my faith again and
Mm.
spirit and my creator. And I'm big on that for people because when we realize we are merely just a vessel being carried how we are, and when I cannot now unsee what I've had the pleasure of seeing, and that's a physical person leaving their body and ascending to a new place. You can't help but be empowered on your journey of
Mm.
this lifetime. And so that's both, again, personally, professionally, formally, informally. Personally, again, my own family, I've unfortunately also had the loss of babies myself. So, being a grieving mother myself and my kids, my husband, I really, that impact on yourself, on your physical body, on those around you is an experience that I actually wish, and we all will be, we're not immune to it. We're all gonna experience grief whether we like it or not, all right? We're all gonna experience it in some shape, way, or form. Some people experience it as their very first, one might be a family pet at 2 or whatever. Some we may have experienced it. We've come into this world generationally with it already. And what I mean by that is with generational trauma. So you've experienced the grief before now. It's just you've come into the world having already experienced it because your cells feel it. Yeah. Um, and so with grief and with loss and a lot of the work that we do here, it's can we, knowing that we're never going to be immune to it, can we live a life because of it rather than lose ourselves because of it, right? So, you know, because again from a young age and because I've seen too much, like I'm talking babies that come into emergency, their parents' worst day ever. Again, when I look back on my emergency career, I spent a lot of time in trauma departments and a lot of time in pediatric nursing as well.
Mm.
When you experience and see, I've got so many memories where it's like just those moments, those sliding door moments, visions of people holding back mums and dads, on their children's passing, on their final moments, or something, a drowning, or there's just so much, I've being able to, bring a baby back to life and then lose them and crash them and leave on that day and just go, fuck, could I have done more in this moment? Right. And no, hand on your
Mm.
heart. Like you've got to be willing. And for me, with a lot of the work that I do and a lot of the work that I did, I had to go, I've got to stop shouldering all this grief that was never mine or that was not mine to carry, that I just, and my human self, my empath self of the past, because I can talk about that in a bit, the part of me that felt like I needed to serve the world in a way that was the community and service and we have to be willing to know that collateral damage is a thing, and that
Mm.
when we know that sometimes we're creating collateral damage by not being the version of us within our homes. So, like, now I say to people, can you serve yourself and your family so that the damage, you allow your kids to create their own damage of their life, not any damage that you've brought through to them?
Mm.
Like, let us all go home and ensure that our griefs and our losses and the sacrifices and our identities and our things haven't shaped, negatively impacted those that we're here to serve. And that's first and foremost yourself and your family at home before anybody else.
Mm. Yep.
And it's something that we all get to. I hope whoever's listening to this now, put the mirror up, give yourself an opportunity to introspect and go, where am I passing down things that I'm unwilling to change within me first?
Yeah. And the podcast, is really about sharing stories to for listeners to shift their perspective. Yes, they're going to go through their own grief and loss, but can they shift their perspective on things prior? Can they learn certain things from the stories of others? Because I think, you know, my perspective was probably shifted. I was probably very much scared of death until my stepdad passed away in 2013.
Mhm.
And over a 5-day period, it was the most beautiful 5 days. He
Is it?
battled thyroid cancer for 18 years.
Wow.
And basically, he had gone through a lot. And we all got called into the hospital. And, the doctor sat there with him. He'd been working with him for many years. He'd had many surgeries. And, the doctor said, look, wanted to call a family meeting so that I can explain to you, Pete,
Yeah.
the things we've talked about, so that then the family can hear what we've talked about and your decision. And the decision was, okay, we can probably extend your life maybe another 6 months by putting you into a different facility and kind of being in long-term palliative care.
Yeah.
Or, we can speed up the process a little bit, make sure that you aren't in pain, make sure that you kind of have got good quality of life, that you're not just sitting in a facility as a bit of a kind of shell of a person.
Yeah.
And he said, my decision, doc, I wanna, choose my own
Yeah.
destiny. And that week we kind of one night we went out and we brought in a carton of his favorite beers, into the hospital, into palliative care there, and we had fish and chips one night,
Yeah.
and it was good. The grandkids were, you know, playing on the floor and we were joking and laughing, and it was just such a beautiful week. And I'm gonna get teary here, but
Perfect.
sitting there holding his hand and feeling the strength pass from him to us,
Yes.
and you know, getting that being in that experience where someone takes their last breath.
Yes.
Um,
Steve.
and you're scared of it, right? Before it, you're scared of it. And then when it happens, yes, it's upsetting, but there was something beautiful about it as
True.
well, right? Something beautiful, that someone that's had an impact on your life, that's had an impact on the world, that is, kind of helped you put some of the pieces into your life. But what is the lesson you can learn from? And the lesson that I learned from that was, I sit there, and if anyone's listening, I was actually sitting watching the sun, or waiting for the sunrise to come up this morning, at Norrie's Head at Cabarita. And I just thought, if today was the last day of your life, who would you want to spend it with? What
Yeah.
would you wanna do, right? Like, would you even sit there and go, "I'm gonna do something that's gonna stress me. I'm gonna
Mm.
do something that's gonna give me anxiety. I'm gonna do something that" you know, all these different things. No, you wouldn't. You're not gonna spend it with people that you don't have time for, right? And I think, you know, we need to start living our life one day at a time. Yes, we've got to think ahead, and we've got to think, there's things that kind of come from behind. But if we approach every day as if it was our last, right, we would give more time to the people that we love, right? We would spend more time on the things that we actually appreciate, the actually doing the things that we actually want to do, rather than, you know, spending our days on other people's expectations, other people's agendas, other people's bullshit, really, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, like, I know there's many people around the world that say, like I know Elon Musk says that, if you're in a meeting and you're just not getting anything from it, just walk out of it, right? Like, it's an interesting thing, because why do we put up with so much shit? We
Yep.
don't have to.
Yep.
Right? Like,
I
we
love
can change our perspective, and we can just sit there and go, "No, I deserve better. I want better.
Yeah.
And if today was my last day on earth, how do I want to remember it?" Before we get back into the episode, from time to time you might have a burning question, a guest recommendation, a comment, or some feedback, which I always appreciate. If so, I'd love to continue the conversation after this episode, so let's connect. I'm easy to find, but the best place to engage and connect is on Instagram, at the Steve Hodgson. But that's enough from me. Let's get back into the episode.
Oh, I love that, Steve. And can I just say thank you so much for sharing as well. I It's so beautiful, as you said, to experience someone's death, and especially in the way that you've just shared. And I often say to people, start with the end in mind. So, like, if you can get to there, I've got an incredible, um, process that I take people through where it's like, yeah, you're on your deathbed. Now what? Like, looking
Mm.
back, what are your regrets? Like, what are you leaving behind? Who's with you? Who's, at your funeral? And if you're, bird's eye view and you're watching people, like, what are they saying?
Yeah.
who will be speaking and what kind of things are they gonna remember you by? I say to my often the women in business, I say, "Hey, ask your kids what do you think like mummy like if you could describe mummy, what would it be?" Now I actually we do what's called family meetings and we check in with our kids and with my hubby and we've created a life of time freedom. So we get to do this and even before we had this, we would do it anyway as we were starting to create and curate our time with what matters most, and that's each other and our family and first and foremost ourselves. Um, and we do these family meetings and we ask the kids like, "What do if you could describe mummy, what would it be?" And then we'd say the same with hubby. And we ask them to say it about themselves too. Now, what I love is a past version of me, my kids would have been like, "She worked a lot. She was never home. She was too busy." All right. Now my kids go, "She's so fun and she loves dress ups and she loves this and she loves this." Now, what I love about that, Steve, is it's not gonna be, I changed all these people's lives, first and foremost. It's not gonna be she wrote all these books or she did all these things and she created,
Mm.
multi-millions and yes, they're gonna maybe share that. Though if they're saying that at my funeral, that's what it's about.
Mm.
A life
Yep.
well lived. A life that created impact, sure. As somebody that as their sovereign right, they were happy and they had fun and there was play and there was joy and there was adventure. Now, you know why and I get so, like, fired up about it, Steve? The reason why I am truly about people, especially living a life of play and joy and fun and adventure, is especially for young girls and boys like me who had to grow up really freaking fast. Play, fun, joy, and adventure wasn't their childhood all the time. So, as adults, and whether or not you experienced something big as a child, you had to grow up really quick, or you were the child that got to have that because you had stability in the home, irrespective, for what purpose as adults do we choose to lose ourselves in the chaos and the busy, and that we forget that play, joy, fun, adventure is our sovereign right, and that's what we're here for. Like, that's what we're actually here for,
Yeah. Yep. And it's
and you
interesting because a lot of us sit there and you hear people saying, "Oh, I wonder what people are gonna say at my funeral," or, "I wonder what my eulogy will be like," right? And we think we can't write our eulogy, but we can live our eulogy,
absolutely.
right? Because we can make the decisions and we can be very conscious around the actions, the decisions we take on a daily basis to
Exactly.
actually shape what that eulogy is gonna say.
Exactly, and it's like, again, you can wait for someone else to write it for you, or you can just write every day. Like, literally right now, you don't have to wait for a new year, you don't have to wait for a brand new Monday. Like, start anytime or create a new chapter anytime. Get a new book, get a new pen, and just create. And again, I can't unsee what we've seen now. I can't like, I'm a testimony of it. Like, I'm now living a life far different to the one that I was living. So you can literally create, curate, and do whatever the F you wanna do with whatever time that you wish to choose that to do, with whoever, go wherever, and do that however you choose. Like, I just like, I wanna be really clear on that because my path before could have been totally just staying where I was, and I was just willing and brave enough and courageous enough to face the woman in the arena and the mirror and go, "Hmm, I wonder what else I could do. I wonder what," like, I talk about ikigai a lot. Mm, I've always wanted to serve people. I love helping people. I love, you know being able to do that, and so my whole life I was doing that. Just it was all leading me somewhere. So I invite anyone that's listening right now, what clues has your life given you? Like, what ikigai, gems have been there all along? Like, I invite you to consider what is the things that your friends always ask you for? Or like,
Mm.
you know, now, yes, we life coach now, we business mentor, we take people on the greatest journeys of self and spirit and lots of things. My whole life I was doing this. I was always the person that would sit and listen to people about their life and go, "Oh, have you thought about this?" I was doing this as a young, 7-year-old young girl.
Mm.
Just it was up to me to finally listen to the call and stop doing it as a, that's just what I do, right? And actually make it what I am actually here doing.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So talk to me about obviously through the shift of perspective through, the trauma, the grief, the loss, the experiences that you've been in as a caregiver, as a parent,
Yeah.
sadly losing a child as well. Talk to me about these days. You've shifted your perspective, you've shifted your life. What are your non-negotiables on a weekly and a daily basis that they have to happen for
Yeah.
you to, you know, be aligned with the person, the mother, the wife, the sister, the daughter, whatever you want to be,
Mm,
and you want to be aligned with that
yeah.
true version of yourself? What are those non-negotiables?
I love this, Steve. I always answer with these 3 things. 3 S's, I call them: stillness, spaciousness, and solitude. Now, when I say solitude, SOUL, solitude. To operate in the way that I do, at the capacity that I have, with the longevity that I wish to do it, I have to take care of me. In order for me to be the best, self to myself and to my inner child, right? In order for me to be the best partner, because I'll say that now, having, experienced many versions of our marriage, Dane and I, we've rebirthed us a number of times, and so now it's self first, it's my relationship second, it's my kids third, and I'll tell you why in a second. Um, so, that time for me to be that person and then be the mother and then serve the community and serve the world. Like, I'm on this really big mission for what I'm here to do. And it's not what I'm here to do because I've chosen it. This is actually my soul's contract. I've been put here to do what I'm doing. Even if I didn't want to do it, I would have landed here anyway and, been doing it. I have to ensure that I have space, that I have capacity, I have stillness because I move so fast. And again, if earlier on in the episode, we talk about I was just running, I was just racing. And what was not happening was that ability to come into stillness. So I do a lot of practice around stillness to the point where a past version of me would have found that really scary because that would have meant facing herself. I have I can go into spaces and places where I'm completely silent and it is just heaven. And I can do that for hours if I wanted to, right? Again, when
Yep.
I say space, I'm talking everything's off. I'm not like I'll be grounded. Again, when I say stillness and spaciousness and then solitude, it is time for me. Now, if I don't do that, I cannot operate at the level that I do now, and I choose not to operate in that way at a level that isn't congruent with my values or congruent with what I'm here to do. I'm a far better operator, leader, guider, mentor, mother, wife, friend, daughter, all the labels that we choose, and then ultimately my sovereign being when I've taken the time for that. And again, you know, that is a practice that takes practice. Like, you can't just, especially when you've been in the rat race for a long time. You know, past version of me, I'd be on night duties and then day shifts and then, then I'd be out at the RAF base and then I'd be doing all the things. I was always running businesses on the side. You can't do that if you truly value those S's and those words.
Mm.
And then of course, just because again it's really important, sometimes it's actually not what I do, Steve, that is how we've arrived to here. It's what I don't do. And I don't waste my time. I don't spend it with people that I wouldn't want at my funeral. I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't have these vices that everyone has. It's more what I don't do, Steve, why I do here, why I'm able to do what I do. And I think it's really important. People are looking at what more they can do. Stop doing the things that are stopping you.
Mm. Yep. Love
You
that.
know, I don't waste it scrolling. I'm so specific. My time. One of my mentors is Dan Martell, so he's actually all about time and buying back your time. He released a book called Buy Back Your Time. My time is actually one of my values. So important. Like, people
Mm.
are like, we've all got 24 hours in a day. And I'm like, let's change that notion. You've only got 24 hours in a day. What are you going to spend it doing? So, like, for me, time is of the essence. Time, you said it at the start, Steve. Our kids value time. So,
Yeah, they do.
my time as a mother is spent completely present. How can I do that? Going back to those 3 S's, I can do that completely present because I have solitude time. I am still and I have spaciousness in my calendar, in my head, in my heart, in my aura, in my place around me. You know, spaciousness even I invite anyone listening to this, think about the space of the things that you have. I live a really minimalist life, Steve, so over the last 3.5 years, we've been just traveling Australia, traveling the world with little things. You don't need all the things that you think you need. Yeah?
It's
So,
clutter.
clutter, get rid of stuff. If you have not used it, get rid of stuff, and I mean everything. Like, my mum often jokes and says, "Oh my gosh, when you come home, I feel like I've got to strap my bed down because you might get rid of that too." But it's a joke. Like, literally, if you don't need like, if you're looking at any part of your home, your things, your belongings, your fridges, your drawers, if there's anything that doesn't need to be get it gone. Energy, get
Mm.
it gone. So, yeah, that'd be
Yeah.
mine. How about yours, Steve? I'd love to know, what are your non-negs?
My non-negotiables is I do cycle class
Nice.
3 to 4 times a week, and it's hit cycle. I used to do a lot of running, but then obviously hitting the fatigue, it kind of takes it out of me a lot more. So I find cycles good because it's a little bit more supported. Um, and the consistency of that has really helped me. I love my wellness as well. I love the
Yeah.
sauna, the cold plunge,
Yes.
and I'm getting a lot more into. I've kind of dipped my toe a little bit into meditation, but I did a meditation course. I've got a meditation retreat in March,
Beautiful.
April, and one later on in the year. So just doing a lot more of those things,
Yeah.
and really trying to master that meditation because the power it has on our mind and the
Oh,
power it has on our body and how we can kind of deal with situations and how we can kind of live is just so powerful. Um,
100%.
and
100.
for me, like I gave up alcohol for 6 months probably maybe September, October 2023. And I gave it up for 6 months. And it wasn't about just giving up alcohol forever.
Mm.
But I gave up for 6 months, and it completely changed my relationship with alcohol.
Yeah.
So I might have a drink now, but I'll savor the drink. I
Yes.
won't just have a
Enjoy
drink
it.
just like it's just like a bit of a mask or a bit of a
Yeah.
numbing
Yeah.
of stress or anxiety or those kind of things. So now I just enjoy a glass of wine, and if I don't finish the bottle of wine,
You're fine with it. Yeah.
I'm fine with it. Like, I don't have to finish the bottle of wine, but
I
a
know.
lot of the time we're like, what's put in front of us? If a meal's put in front of us, we've got to finish it.
Right.
If we have a bottle of wine, if we open something, we've got to finish it. Like a lot of people go, oh, we can't let that go to waste. Well, yes, you can. You
Yeah.
don't have to do anything.
I love
So
that.
for me, it's really about unlocking. Like obviously, I've gone through a lot of stuff with a naturopath around
Mm.
just unlocking certain things. Vitamins, gut health. And you kind of mentioned it earlier as well, and I say the same thing, is that like there's no destination to growth. Like we kind of are born and we die a work in progress. Like
Yes.
there's never a destination we arrive at and go, hey, I'm here, I'm empowered, I'm enlightened, I am the best version of myself, and I know everything about me. I am the best human being, I'm the best husband, I'm the best father, I'm the best friend, human being. I'm just like the best, right? It
Mm.
just doesn't happen because experiences shape us, and
And
through our life shapes us, right? And it shapes us in a way that means that we have to evolve, that we have to change. And we were talking about loss and grief, and prior to kind of us hitting record today, we were chatting, and I was saying, you know, to gain something, you always have to lose something, right? So I've gained a lot in my last 12, 18 months, 2 years, 3 years. Like I've been going through a big transformation process over the last kind of 7 or 8 years. And for me, it's hard because I've had to lose certain things, especially in the last 6 to 12 months, because I had to be selfish to a certain point in
yes.
recent years because I couldn't be anything to anyone else because I couldn't even be me for me, right?
Yeah, let
But
that
I had to
mm.
unpack, who am I? Who do I actually really want to be? Am I being the best version of myself?
Yes.
And the interesting thing with that is that by being the best version of you and stepping out and having the courage to step out and say, this is me, this is how I want to live, this is how I want to be seen, this is how vulnerable I want to be. What it does is it exposes other people and you lose people.
Yes.
Sadly, you lose people. But in saying that, I mentioned, and I mention a lot, but I mentioned prior as well, is that everything I'm going through, everything that I've been through, I just sit there and I go, gratitude first.
Yeah.
Gratitude first, because, yes, you can go through some shit, but it's not all shit. There's focus on the gratitude, because a lot of the time, even I've had a really tough kind of 12 months, and for my family, gone through a separation. And the thing for me though is that even in all the pros and cons, right? There is far more to be grateful for for in the last 12 months than there is to be disappointed or to be frustrated or to be angry or upset at, right? But a lot of the time it's very easy to kind of set up the pity party and kind of just focus on all the negative things. But if you sit there and you go, how do I shift my perspective today? How do I, kind of, and how do I flip the script, right? And I know you talk about this as well, right? And
Mm.
like flipping the script, like when you have a negative thought in your head, how do you flip it?
Yeah.
Like when you're not feeling great, how do you flip it? I talk about having a toolbox, so when you're not feeling great, what do I need to do to feel good?
Yep.
Like if I'm feeling negative about someone, how can I shift that? How can I flip the script to
Yeah.
feel better about that person? How
Yeah.
can I feel better about myself? How can I feel better about the world? We can all watch the nightly news, and I can't even remember the last time I watched the news, uh, but we can, you can sit there and you can doom scroll through Facebook, and you can, watch the news, and you can really just kind of beat yourself up and just kind of go, what kind of world do we live in?
Mm.
But like, there is just so much good out there.
Yeah.
Like, at the end of the day, watching the sunrise come up today, and as I say, every sunrise is unique. It is
Yeah.
beautiful, whether it's clouded and it's just peeking through the clouds, or whether there's not a cloud in the sky. It's always unique, it's always different, and, like, a lot of the time as we're running through this world, and a lot of people are busy and they're focusing on achievement and money and success, they don't actually stop to just sit in their back garden
Abs
and watch a caterpillar
Yeah. Drifting.
crawl on a leaf, right? Or go to the beach and just watch a crab run along the sand,
Yeah.
or just, and I know through meditation and some of the stuff that I've done, they say, sit there and just go and focus on something that is living,
Yeah.
and just see at the pace that it is
Yeah.
going in your garden or in nature.
Yeah.
And it just it's just so beautiful to focus on that. And
Absolutely.
that comes into what you're talking about, the stillness as well, right?
Yeah.
Because if you just be,
Just
rather than trying to be all these things that you think you should be or people want you to be, if you actually just be and focus on the present, and just focus on, like, this world is like, we are a miracle, right? Like,
Oh,
for you or I to be sitting right here is a miracle.
I say this all the time. It's like,
Like,
you know how special you are and we are to just
what are
be.
you doing with the miracle?
I know.
Like,
Yeah.
what are you doing with the miracle? It wasn't an accident.
Yeah, I always say, Steve, like, how amazing is it that our body and then however you choose to believe it, went, cool, we need like 8 fingers and 2 thumbs. And then we need to put the 2 ears here, and then the hair goes here, and then the 2 eyes go here. Like, we are literally like, if brought into your everyday of gratitude and just in awe, like, and you said it before, our children are showing us every day, right? Or little kids that, are, like, excited over their first walk or their first bike, or, like, wow, they've never gone to Dreamworld before, they've never been to a beach before, and they've lived, overseas or something, they've come to an Australian beach, and they're like, "Oh my gosh," like, how can we as adults have that type of excitement for life every day? And often, and this is what I say, if you are enduring or you have endured big things in your life, currently or in the past, it is the greatest opportunity and invitation for you to become probably one of the most gratitude-filled persons that you know, if you can shine a light on it and go, "Oh my gosh, a past version of me might not have noticed this," or, "Oh my," like, "Wow, like, that person that I just saw die, I literally would never see that again. I am so grateful for that."
Yep.
Right? Like, let us not, and you said it just before, Steve, let us not always have to hear something for it to, and preemptively be the next thing. So, again, I hope that, for those of you that are listening to this, you go, "Man, I don't want to experience something bad for me to have the gratitude on the other side of it." Though, unfortunately, as humans, we often have to experience things, and at the helm of experiencing it, then we see out the other side. What if you could listen to people's stories, hear people's journeys, be part of, having your ears and your eyes and your heart and your soul wide open and go, "Wow, I'm gonna learn from that and apply what I've just heard or what I've just, felt or experienced and incorporate that into my life." And again, you and I aren't the first people to talk about gratitude, though all these people can't be wrong. All these people that are doing meditative, deep practices, stillness practices, soul practices, all of these people, and again, you and I are very few of many out there that have come to this state of, a forever practice, a forever student, a lifelong learner, a lifelong self-masterer. You don't get self-mastered. You are always self-mastering. You
True.
don't just arrive like I'm the first person to pop people's bubbles and go, "This ain't it." Okay? It gets to get better. Though it gets to get better as you expand and as you grow. Let us My book is called "A Reason to Rise," and the whole way through it, you realize that there's not a reason to. Your whole life is a reason. Every day is a reason. Every cellular part of your body is a reason. And again,
Yep.
if we live with the end in mind, knowing that, we're all going to experience grief in some shape, way, or form, though we get to learn from other people's huge griefs or people's that you've learnt about or, friend of a friend or someone you watch on socials, you might not have to experience the big ones to have and do all the things that you wish to do. And that's okay. Just again, it's a reminder of if you can you sit with gratitude, you can sit with thanks no matter what it is, no matter what you're going through, you will not only will you absolutely expand your own life, you will actually call in more of what you want. Gratitude is the frequency, love is the frequency. And if we're actually if we are more grateful for what we have, we'll actually create more of what we have.
Yeah. You attract what you focus on.
Oh, and again, you know, how many times do people need that evidence though? It's like, "I'm focusing on this, I'm focusing on that," and then more of that comes. It's like, "Of course." So start focusing on the thing that you want. It's like when people say, I'm the first one, linguistics, I've got a background in NLP as well, so it's like, okay, linguistics is a really simple change that people can make. "I don't want this, I don't want that." Great, tell me what you want. Start speaking that. No, I don't wanna call in these men anymore. I don't wanna call in these this. I don't wanna, be broke anymore. I don't want this. It's like, cool. Let us focus on what you want. What do you want? Start talking that
Yep.
into existence.
Yeah. Yep.
It's crazy,
Yep.
right?
Definitely. So we talk about obviously all the growth that you've gone through, Nadine, and the self-reflection, the self-awareness. But what's one thing that you haven't fully learned about yourself yet?
Oh, I love this question. Old things like to still creep up from time to time, Steve. And that's what whenever I've been asked this question, I go, you know, we can, I get excited now whenever I have the feeling of I'm not good enough or I'm not worthy. Because guess what, ladies and gents, this will still come up. You can do all the work in the world for it. I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy. Though now when I have those feelings come up, I go, "Oh, this is exciting. I'm about to hit a new part of me that I've never been before." Because I believe now when you do the work and you continue to do the work, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, I can't have what I have, fear of the next thing is simply just a version of you that you've never been before. Okay? So I get excited now and I move forward that. Though I'm also beautifully moving through this state of like, what if nothing is everything and everything is nothing? Because I've come to this state of like, cool, you can experience all that you get to experience and continue to do that. I talk about my dark night of the soul. So, um, it can be an experience that people go through to actually emerge like the phoenix rising, right? And similar to what you were talking about with sunrises, like in Egyptian culture and in their methodology, every day is actually a rebirth. You actually die and then you are reborn, okay? So there's so many things during my dark night of the soul, and I believe that I get to experience more, um, that I'm in this state of like, what if we arrive, if nothing is what I said before, if nothing is everything and everything is nothing, and we get to experience what this life is here to bring us, then who do I get to become in that process? What challenge or what exciting new initiations do I get to experience? And I feel, Steve, in the coming, times where I'm stepping into some big things that I'm here to do, I know that more challenges get to arise me because as in for me to experience. And that's the part that makes me go, fuck, because I feel like I've already experienced so much. And at the same time, Steve, I'm open to experiencing whatever God, source, creator, whatever feels as though they need to bestow upon me for me to emerge who I am. And because now that service for me to the world, to myself, to my family, to the world now is big, and it gets bigger. And each time it is often at the other end of an emergence of me and a phoenix rising of me and an ego death of me. So why I say that nothing is everything and everything is nothing, you know, whatever we're living right now, on the other side, there is always uncertainty. So how can I
Mm.
maintain certainty of what is uncertain? I have no idea, Steve. And I talk about this often. People engaging coaches and mentors and all the things, and it's like they're sharing from a place of I know everything. Nadine Muller says, I know nothing. Okay, I am willing to impart with the world what I do know, though I'm also gonna share that I know nothing compared to what I would like to know, and that's the
Mm.
beauty and the juice of this life, Steve, as you know. I know you're all over this, though, for the listeners, right? How about if you know nothing? And if you
Mm.
come from that place of knowing nothing, you are an open vessel to learning everything. Though again, what is everything? I'm now opening this up for just, like, people's minds to be like, "What the hell?" Though, if we just realize that, we can then become the vessel that doesn't cock block ourselves. So, like,
Mm.
the ego death of me of not knowing everything, if I've arrived to a place where I feel like I've known that I know everything, Steve, I'm on the wrong path.
Yep.
Yeah?
Exactly. And also as well, when you have that focus and when you have that perspective and you have that kind of vision each day, is that you don't resist, you just receive.
Yes, and a thing for me, past version of me wouldn't have
Surrender.
allowed this, the surrender. The surrender to go, "You know what? What will be, will be. What is for me will be for me. What I am meant to endure will endure. What I'm meant to experience will experience." So we've had 2 losses, as I mentioned. I'm wanting to expand this family. I know that we will get to and I will receive, though what that gets to look like as to when will be divinely when it's meant to be, right?
Of course.
So again, I have every faith and every belief that that will happen, though that's not up to me as to when.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and for me, people go, "Wow, you really went through your pregnancy losses really effortlessly." And I'm like, "No, no, no. Just you don't see what some people are doing behind the scenes." Yeah?
Mm.
The work that
Yeah.
creates for someone to then go, "Right, let us work through this."
Yeah. It's the
You know?
iceberg.
It is the iceberg, Steve. And if people can just get behind that belief for themselves, if you can just realize that the top of the iceberg and then there's a whole mushroom underneath that's ready for you to sit in exploration for is just a beautiful, as we said at the start, both of us, it is it then becomes you're obsessed in who you become and who you get to learn about yourself, right? That's a
Yeah.
never-ending journey. I talk about you have a master key and that's you, though you don't know what door that opens, though essentially that master key, you take that anywhere. It's you. It's you. Your vessel goes, you do whatever. Though, if you can sit in that uncertainty of the certain, then and realize that you know nothing and know everything all at the same time, it's an interesting beast that this world gets to then become for you.
Yeah. Nadine, if you had to write a definition of what success meant to you now, what would it be?
I love that. You know, it's really what I explained before, Steve. I success to me in the past was all about achieving and money, and because I hadn't come from that, right? Now it's actually a life well lived. I've I've found and discovered purpose within self. I've left a legacy behind. My work has meant more than just me and my immediate family. When I first started, it was about me honoring my little girl and the people around me, particularly my husband, and then our children. But then it omnidirectionally started just seeping everywhere because that's what the work does. Omnidirectionally
Good.
within my mom, my dad had already passed, then my mom and my brother, and then my husband's family, and it just omnidirectionally went everywhere. My friends, my family, and then it was at that time that I realized that I need to do this work on a bigger scale, and that's this work that we do, and that's my legacy, leaving behind through my own story and through my own tapestry of life, bodies of work that people can learn, listen, anchor, and be in wisdom sharing of that, and know that at the end of my life, I didn't just impact my little person and my little people and
Mhm.
change the generation. It was leaving a legacy behind that I left, the world better than when I first found it, because a little version of me didn't always find this world to be so great. So now I absolutely love it. And now that success, it's allowing, time to be of the essence, my health to be of the essence, my immediate family, no matter what they need, I will be able to facilitate whatever our loved ones require and get to the end of a life where they're not saying what I did, it was who I was rather more
Mm.
than what I did. That's true success to me, more than money in the bank will ever be. Though it's interesting, Steve, money will flow to you when you operate like that. And so, we are financially free. We have created generational wealth. Um, though it was when I stopped focusing on it that more of that came. When I focused on service and legacy and building me and just generously, on the weekend gone, we're doing generous work. We go overseas. We just gift our time and energy to host retreats overseas. We just generously live a life of generosity, you
Yep.
know, um, and you don't do it to receive more, though when you do, you receive more. But like
Mm.
money is abundance, it's the richness of life beyond money, Steve.
Comes down to the intention. What is your actual intention? The intention is, and it's funny because a lot of people go, I've really been trying to do this and I've been trying to do that and it's just not happening. And it's like, well, what are you wanting?
Mm,
Like, what is your actual deep intention of it? Like, it's interesting. Um, Stephen Bartlett, of Diary of a CEO, he did something, and obviously I'm, 70 odd episodes into my weekly podcast. And it was interesting, because the marketing team always say to me, "Oh, you've got to this and you've got to that and you've got to get bigger guests and you've got to this." And I'm like, hang on, like, and I think Steve put it best when he did a post and he said, "I'm celebrating 7 years." This was probably a month or so ago, and he said, "I'm celebrating 7 years. For the first 3 years, hardly anyone listened." And he said, "I wasn't doing it for the money." He said, "You have to be doing stuff
yeah.
that,"
Lo
like he said, "I was doing the podcast even if no one was listening. And if you're prepared to do something, even if no one's listening, even if it might not impact anyone, but it's what you feel called to do. That is, over time, that is where the power comes out because it's authentic, it's genuine, it's real.
That's, very few that's a very entrepreneurial mindset too, right? Very few are willing to do what most will never do to have what most will never have. And again, people see I before, life coaching and business mentoring, I was health and fitness coaching and mindset coaching. And so but people forget all of the other stuff before. And so they just saw in the last few years, half a decade of business going fucking gangbusters. And it was like, hang on a second. Do you remember what's been happening over a decade now? People are like, wow, you've really exploded in the last, I remember when I launched a specific arm of the business. And we brought in men's work and we were doing some other things. And once we'd done that, we'd hit 7 figures within 7 months. And people just like, "Oh my gosh, that's amazing." Like, da 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 da. And I just remember being like, people don't remember how much, when people weren't watching, who I had to become in the process. You know, People are like, "Wow, this or that," or, "You must have done this course." And I'm like, "I've invested over $1 million into my personal professional development." You'd wanna hope that I'm, like, just again, it makes people just like people can see the outcome and they forget very again, like what you were saying before, it's the iceberg. Right? What's out the surface versus what has been the deep treasure trove. I'm getting it now because again, this book was only released a few days ago, so people are reading my story. I'm sharing the story. People have watched me over, on socials for the last decade, and I share some things in there that no one knew until I shared it in a book. So they're like, "Oh my gosh, like, it now makes sense," or this or that, and it's like, again, remember you're watching people's highlight reels or whatever else. And again, I like to think over the last 10 years, I've created a community because I have not done that. I haven't created a highlight reel. Share your authentic true self. It doesn't mean you have to share everything. Exactly what I just said. I hadn't shared everything. Arguably, the book, I still don't share everything because I couldn't possibly put everything in the book. And then, and I want to say this, we're forming a culture where everything must be shared. There's sacredness of not sharing. There's the reverence of stories that I choose not to share in my book. And again, because some stories aren't mine to share, some stories are mine. And you get to, for those listening, have discernment of everything that you do share or not. If you're
Yep.
going through something big right now and you feel called not to share it, don't. If you're running a personal brand on social media, you're like, "Oh my gosh, I have to share this because my coach or mentor says that I have to because that's about being authentic." And your heart of hearts is like, "No, I don't wish to share it." Or you're
Mm.
someone I'm big about this with the women that I serve. It's like, it's beautiful to share from a scar versus a wound, Share when you're out the other end and that feels more congruent for you, when that feels really truth for you, when you're then walking in a truth because you've learned something along way on the way. Unless you
Yeah.
wanna have it as an open wound and you're sharing energetically some really big things with the world, do you wanna do that? Again, it's an invitation for those listening. What is sacred? What do you get to keep beautifully? What do you get to share? And then timing of that, of when you wish to.
Yeah. Perfect. Last question, Nadine. Who's been your greatest teacher in life?
Oh, this is beautiful. I have been. I've embarked on multiple beautiful mentors, guiders, spiritual mentors and guiders. I'm beautifully connected with my creator, who also teaches me a lot. Coaches and mentors that have guided me and led me in spaces both personally and professionally, in mastery, in business, and in so many other ways. And yet, and this is the work that I share, your greatest teacher is always only ever yourself. You have all your answers if you are brave enough to confront yourself. And so, the mastery of self and the continuation of that mastery of self journey is only ever one where my responsibility as a mentor is to bring everyone back home to themselves and realize that they are their own inner oracle. And while they may seek guidance and counsel and insight, I always say to my clients, hey, I'm never giving you advice. I'm only ever giving you insight. I'm only ever giving you what I'm seeing, feeling, what I've experienced. And you get to take this as you will because you have the answer. I talk about the inner oracle all the time. You have your own master key. You can go and open all the doors that you want, though at the end of the day, you don't have a million keys. You just have one and it's called you and it's your mastery key of self. You have the
Mm.
answers. So, she's been my greatest teacher. I say she because I have many versions of myself, right? I have the little me, the inner, that inner child in me that I choose to never grow up from because I had to grow up. So I choose to always leave her as a child to enjoy and have play and fun and joy. She's my inner child. I have the version of me that's my human self. We do really beautiful work here, healing work, growth work, energetic work that is my soul's contract and what I'm here at a soul level to do. So that's another version of me. And then I have the versions of me that I'm yet to become, Steve. And they, she, her, whatever I choose to step to in the future, I don't know who she is, though I'm excited to be beautifully taught and guided by her. Um, and I'll step into her as I'm ready, and as I continue to have my life experiences, mean that I'm ready for her. And I talk about 10x work, so I do a lot of 10x work here. I start operating as my next 10x each time. And I'm incorporating now, the next 10x version of me, though I know that there's many more after this.
Mm.
And she's a forever piece of beautiful work and art for me to step into. And I'm excited by the prospect of who I'm yet to become and what more experiences of this lifetime I get to endure and be gifted with in order to step into her and grieve the past version of me, because at some point I'm going to be grieving this one, because in order to claim her, I'll need to say goodbye to this woman. And that's a scary thought because I've loved the woman I've become. Though I also know that in order to step into the one that I have no idea how capable I do in my knowing, Steve, though what I've seen and what I've come to learn in this work is it just gets to get better, that I don't even know, going back to your question of what don't you know? I don't even know how great things can become. And so I'll be willing to shed this part of me one day when that arrives.
Yep. I've had a number of guests say, when I've asked them that question, they've said me. And, but I don't think I've had someone, everyone's said it differently, but I don't think I've had someone that has explained it as good as you just explained it there. So
You
that was
know,
phenomenal.
thanks, Steve. I appreciate it. And thank you. You definitely lead a podcast that is more about conversation and going back and forth. And I love it's what I love. Not prepping questions or anything and just chatting. And, I've been on, TV and potties and radios and all different things. And often it's so easy to be popped in a box of what it has to look like, right? And you love
Mm.
not doing that. So I absolutely love that and appreciate you so much and look forward to connecting with you more for sure.
Yeah, no, awesome. Now, on the connection side of things, if someone wants to connect with you, where's the best place to connect with you, engage with you, follow you?
Yeah, amazing. We are across many platforms. So the one that I'm often across and people land into is over on my Instagram. So at Nadine Muller. And obviously, we've got our website as well. So just nadinemuller.com.au. You'll go and see everything over there. Though, again, you'll see I've got such an open door in terms of you'll see us on our socials. There's always often, once a week, I'll say, "Hey, how can I help you? How can I serve you?" And that is me, literally answering questions and doing all the things. I'm here of service. So just please sing out, connect, do all the things. Let me know that you've listened to this podcast. Because again, I've just shared pockets of this journey. Normally, we go down routes of pregnancy and birth trauma, or my cervical cancer journey, or lots of things that have happened in the past. So this one has been one where we've kept on one specific train, which is nice. So let me know, and yeah, I'm only ever a message or connection away from connecting with you for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome. I want to thank you, Nadine, for your sharing and your just your reflections and your insights today. I always get drawn to different guests as we were talking prior to kind of hitting record. I get people writing into me or suggesting me guests, and people say, "Where do you find your guests?" And I say, they come to me or I get drawn to them, and I just love that. every single episode is a different theme, a different topic, a different insight. Like it all kind of molds into similar kind of themes, but people have different ways, and it's all about listeners reconnecting or connecting with certain um certain themes, or something might be said by four different types of guests,
Yeah.
but there's one guest that it resonates with, that person that's listening, and that just one person sits there and goes, wow, that's shifted my perspective. That's going to shift my life. I'm going to put some actions. I'm going to make some decisions to move me forward, move my life forward as a human being, as a father, as a mother, as like as a brother, sister, human being, and it's just absolutely beautiful to have these conversations. And yeah, I just want to honor you for the time that you've given up today. And I've just like I can't wait to go back and listen to this episode, right? Like I've got episodes that I've listened to a number of times, and I'm the one that's got the front row seat, right? I get to ask the
Yeah.
questions, but I sit there and I smile and I laugh and I cry, and I just sit in awe of all of my guests. And I know I just can't wait to listen to this episode probably 2, 3, or 4 times,
No.
because I know I will get more out of it listening to it again, and I know the listeners will get so much out of this episode, because it will just shift people's perspective. It will give them so much information and so many ideas to implement and change their life, and to, work on being the best version of themselves moving forward.
Oh, I love that, Stephen. Thank you so much as well for reserving space and capacity and having me as your guest. I always say to people listening to podcasts, now you've listened to this episode. Now it's like, cool, what are you going to do with the information and the knowledge, or, the landing that you've just received? The world is so busy in the doing. And it's like, and listening to all the podcasts and writing all the things and reading all the books. All right. Now it's like, apply what you've learned, the integration. So if you wrote down those notes, or you've, been really clear on what you've gotten out from this episode, or any podcast, now it's asking yourself, what am I gonna do with the information that I have? Because there's a lot of people listening to all the podcasts. Now start applying it. Start putting some,
Yeah.
draw the lines in the sand and go, right, he or she said this, I've heard this now 3 times. There must be truth in this. I'm gonna actually incorporate this. And if it's
Mhm.
something that you incorporate, then incorporate it. Do what you said that you would do. Be who you said you'd be. And it's like, we are human beings, not human doings, and there's a lot of doing happening, and we get to be. And going back to those, those S's, and, the practices that you incorporate into your life, and likewise me, you know, more of that. If you want external speed, you need internal capacity to do that. So thank you so
Yep.
much, and, yeah, appreciate you, and for all of those listening, again, it's an opportunity, it's an invitation for you to go inwards. Lots of people are taking it externally, go inwards, and that's what my book is all about. Again, A Reason to Rise, you'll see it in Dimick Store, you'll see it in online, on Amazon, on Spotify, on Audible, on, Kindle, on you name it. And again, it's a great read. Now, here's the thing I share, it's not actually, when I took it to my publisher, they were like, "Nadine, how are we gonna do this?" I said, "Well, you either do this or I go somewhere else." So it's not actually just a book. It's a growth workbook and a toolkit, or it's disguised in a book, you see? So in each episode, or in each book, there's actually then QR codes, and there's a seamless app experience. You basically get to listen and anchor into meditations, breaths, visualizations, some really great tools and resources to support you on your journey. Because whilst it's my story, that's more about the reader. And, that's what I'm excited for them, or for all of you to listen into and experience, and again, have the online toolkit and the growth workbook, to utilize at your, at your peril, for whatever you wish.
Yep. Yep. And they can work through it, at their own pace as well. Because I find sometimes when people listen to podcasts, or they go to seminars or trainings, or they do coaching, they can kind of get overwhelmed, and then they just do nothing. Just pick one thing. Like if you've listened today's episode and something's resonated with you, just pick one thing that you can implement, and then come back and listen to the episode again and pick the next thing, and then master that, and just
Yes.
keep chipping away, because over time, it's the one percenters, right? It will just keep building you, keep growing you, and you'll be a better version of yourself in 365 days. You'll be 365% better.
Oh, I love that so much. Oh, love it. Mic drop.
All good. Thank you, Nadine. And I look forward to continuing the connection and, hopefully collaborating with something in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Steve.
All right.
Take
Thanks,
care.
Nadine.